Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to episode 31 of Chess Basics, things every chess player ought to know. Today we're going to continue looking at the Italian game. So that starts out e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. And previously we looked at variations after bishop to c5. And this includes Evans' Gambit, which we looked at in the last video, and also the main line and the Mueller attack, which we looked at in the previous video before that with c3. So these are the ideas for white here. But there's another idea for black in this position, another move for black, which is to play the move knight to f6. This is a very interesting and enterprising move. This is known as the two knights defense. So black has immediately counterattacked the pawn on the e4, and white needs to do something about that. There's several choices. Top choice here in the opening book is to play the move d3, just quietly defending that pawn. And this leads to a solid position for white with a slight advantage, getting into a maneuvering game. Might continue bishop c5 castles, and then white continues with the plan c3 and d4. And you've seen this idea in the previous videos. There's one thing I want to warn you about here, which is there is a slight weakness of this knight f6 move, which shows up in this position. If you're tempted, it's important that you move the bishop out of the way so that if white plays knight g5, attacking the f7 pawn here, you can castle and defend it that way. So the thing you have to watch out for is playing a move like d6, because now after knight g5 there's just no easy way to defend this pawn. You don't want to defend with the queen because obviously the two pieces are worth, the queen is worth more than the two pieces, so white would just go ahead and take there. And what other piece can defend? There's actually nobody that can reach that square. The bishop is blocked in. You really want to bring a rook over there to defend it, or the bishop. If you bring the bishop up to defend, though, this just loses a pawn like that. So you're already in trouble after d6. And in fact, the chess engine says the only way to survive is to play d5. And you've just wasted a tempo, at least, because you've played the move to d6 to d5. And this turns into kind of a temporary pawn sack. And white gets a good game. You don't want to grab the pawn back immediately, because that knight will be kind of pinned there, and this attack against f7 will still be in effect. So the move here is knight a5. So you can play this. It's just it gives an advantage to white. It's just that's something to keep in mind if white gets in this attack on f7. If you fall into this position by mistake, just keep in mind, play that move d5 to break up the diagonal. And okay, you'll see this immediately in the next line here. So this d6 is, for the most part, a quiet line and similar to what we've already looked at. What I wanted to look at here was the most aggressive response from white, which is to play the move knight g5, just immediately going after the pawn on f7. Now this move knight g5 is very controversial in this position. Tarrasch, the famous German player and instructor, called this a beginner's move. He didn't think it was any good at all. But other players thought it was pretty interesting, and it's been played regularly. So it does lead to some interesting play. And it almost forces a pawn sack from black, because once again black has to deal with this threat to f7. He hasn't castled, and the bishop hasn't moved out of the way, so he can't castle in this position. So the main move here, and we're just going to look at the main line in this video and the fried liver attack. So the main line is pawn to here, and then you take. And if you try to keep the pawn with this move knight takes, then the material is even, but this allows the famous fried liver attack. So I just wanted to show you this line briefly, because you don't often get to sacrifice a whole piece. Knight to f7. So the knight on f7 wins a pawn, attacks the queen and the rook, so it's going to win more material, and the only move to stay in the game is king takes. And then white has this move queen to f3, forking the king and the knight. And if black allows white to win the material back, then he's just going to be down a pawn, and the attack will continue. So he has to move king to e6 to defend the knight. Again, the only way to stay in the game. And now the move for white is knight c3. And the game continues from here. I think I'll give some examples. This is kind of a crazy main line here, where the knight goes here to defend, and white sort of ignores the threat. This knight, in addition to defending here, was attacking on c2. White ignores that threat and in fact eggs the knight on, says go ahead, take on c2, and then plays king to d1, saying okay, now take my rook. And this knight really has nothing better to do than to take the rook. And then you can take on d5 here. And this leads to some crazy complications. The king is still in the center and the attack goes on. There's other things that white can try here too besides the a3 move. He can play bishop to b3, defending that way, or he can castle. And all of these moves lead to play that's interesting. The chess engine actually rates this position as even, which means that white has compensation for his material. But there's not a forced win here for white, so both sides can play on from this position. So that's the famous fried liver attack. If you ever get a chance to go into it, I recommend doing so just to gain the experience. See if you can play with the pieces. As white, you're trying to just make yourself as active as possible, get all your pieces into the game, make threats with every move so that black doesn't have time to regroup and defend. As black, you're just trying to defend your position, secure your king somehow, get it out of the center, get your pieces out, and you can afford to give back some material in order to accomplish that. So that's the setup. So let's go back to this position. So after white takes the pawn, the main line is not to grab there and allow the fried liver attack. The main line is to play the move knight to a5. That's hitting the bishop and just giving up on this pawn for a while. Black is playing for activity. You know, white has not developed, and if black doesn't do anything to mess up his structure here, he's got a good setup. He's just down a pawn, and he gets nice piece activity. So the main move for white, the line goes like this: bishop b5 check, and then c6 to stop the check. So I actually have to take it back. Black is going to get a somewhat disorganized pawn structure after these moves. That's pretty much forced. And now white has a bunch of different moves he can play here. I think this is where I will end this. The computer recommendation is bishop to d3, just retreating here. This always feels a little bit weird to me. But if you look at this position, white is a pawn up, but his development is somewhat awkward. His pieces are weirdly placed, and black is a pawn down, but he can develop his bishop, he can castle, and he's got open lines for his bishops. So this is a even position with chances for both sides. Another way to continue at this point is to play the move queen f3. So this is my usual move. What this does is it pins the pawn along this diagonal, so he can't take the bishop immediately. And typical response here would be bishop to e7 or rook to b8, after which this bishop should probably retreat. So anyway, the game continues from here. I guess I don't want to go into too much detail. I just want to say that once again you're in a rich and interesting position. Let's back up. There are other moves in this position besides bishop d6, and bishop e2 I think is traditional main line. It's a more logical place for the bishop from my point of view. And it's not blocking this pawn, and you have the idea of playing d3 later. And it may be possible to play bishop to a4. Let's check this out. Yeah. It's slightly better for black according to the engine to play that way. So maybe some of those other moves are better. So that's the main line of the two knights defense. And I always like to play that way when I get a chance. So whenever I see the move knight f6, I avoid playing like d3 unless I'm in the mood for a really quiet game, and I go straight for knight g5. Now there are other alternatives that black has, and I will get into more of them in the next video. So see you guys then. Bye.